Okay, well, welcome everyone to a brief short session that's just going to kind of give us a quick overview of how to become an assisted living manager in Texas. We get lots of questions at TALA, and so this is just an opportunity for us to kind of break down some of the core components and then be able to have some open discussion around that afterwards. If you have any further questions after this course, please feel free to visit TALA's website. Under our education section, we have a lot of great information on the courses there for further information. So my name is Rose Saenz. I am a huge supporter of TALA and have been since the conception of TALA pretty much. My role with TALA is to support on the workforce development advisor role. So again, thank you for the opportunity. My background is all in assisted living, particularly assisted living and memory care communities. I've opened and operated multiple communities over the years. It's been many years. Won't say because this recording can go for a long time. So hopefully it's many more years after that. And in my roles, I've worked as an executive director and helped with opening communities and helped with licensed communities, and have also helped support new executive directors coming in to learn the roles and responsibilities and prepare for surveys and licensure. And there's probably a lot more I'm missing, but that's probably the most important stuff. Okay. So just to kind of help us understand what it is that we're looking at for licensure and becoming an assisted living manager, it's a very interesting fact that comes up pretty often is, are we supposed to be certified? And you'll see people put a different credential name on their business card, or maybe have gone to a few different providers in Texas that provide the education, and some will say they do a certification period and others will say they don't, you just renew it or you take your continuing education. So it can be a little confusing, but if we break down into the regulations, Texas does not license, the state, Texas HHSC does not license or certify assisted living managers. Instead, there is a requirement within the regulations for assisted living managers that says you must be educated, and there's a very specific areas of what you must be educated over. There's also a full list of approved educators by the state for assisted living managers, and that is listed on the Texas HHSC Provider Portal website, which I do have a link to that at the end of the slides in case you're looking for that portal or you haven't navigated it before. So being an assisted living manager is you do your initial information, which we're going to see on this next slide, but then it's also comprised of an ongoing education per the state regulations. So that ongoing education we'll dive into. It's what we like to refer to as continuing education. Okay, so what education is required? So assisted living facility manager courses, that's what the ALF stands for in short terms, is a total of 24 hours. And it breaks down into two categories. You have 8 hours of regulatory course training, and that teaches you all the basics on the regulations that you must know to be in compliance, for your community to be in compliance. So before or within your first 3 months of hire, you must complete that 8-hour course of regulations. And when I say of hire, meaning that you've been in the role as the administrator or executive director. After that, there's an additional 16 hours of administrative training, and this is more general leadership, business, managing a schedule, those kind of some more basic information, dining services, things of that nature that you need to cover. And that you do have a little more time to complete. And the state allows you to complete those 16 hours before the end of your first year of hire. And again, this is of hire as the executive director. Okay. So assisted living managers also, after you've completed that initial set of 24 hours, you then must have annual continuing education that you need to show proof that you've completed. And that's 12 hours every year. So we could divide that up like an hour a month if you wanted to. But you must have 12 total that you need to be able to show to a surveyor when they come in to show that you're keeping up with your education requirements. So after your first year of employment, you complete your annual CEUs, and at minimum within those 12 hours, you must also complete these two following bullet points. So on the assisted living portal, there's a specific online course, it's free, and it's called Aging in Place and Retaliation. And I put the rule in there for you so that you could find where specifically it states that. And because if you want to be an assisted living manager, you need to get familiar with these rules and what they mean. 553.259, little bracket E, and then another bracket 6. That's that specific one. On the website portal is where you'll be able to find the links for that course. Additionally, at least 2 courses that are listed within the rules, and I have the rule number there for you, must also be included annually. And it gives you several to choose from, but you must meet at least 2 of those as well. And I'm not going to take the time to go through all those on this call today, but I just want you to know that they're very basic things, or things like resident abuse, neglect, and exploitation, or emergency preparedness. They're things of that nature that are very important for you to be managing at your community. And they want to make sure you're staying up to date on those things. Okay, so what if you're working in memory care or a certified Alzheimer's care community? There is a separate requirement for communities that do carry that certification if you're going to be the manager. So if you're going to be the manager at that community, first, you must be at least 21 years of age or older. And there's a few options. You can have an associate's degree in healthcare or a bachelor's degree in health-related field, or you can have a high school diploma or GED equivalent with 1 year minimum experience working in memory care. So I summarized it for you, but when you dive into the role, it's basically saying at a bare minimum, in order to manage a certified Alzheimer's assisted living community in Texas, at a bare minimum, you got to be 21 years old, and you must at least have a high school diploma or GED equivalent with at least 1 year of experience working with memory care.
So I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
This is Vanessa. Just really quick, I had a question. So when I was in a certain role as like senior sales, I knew that, you know, I did want to go into that director role. And I was able to take my certification classes as sales, knowing that I would go into the administrator role. Is that still something that is acceptable, or do I have to then have the role of administrator to now take the courses?
You do not have to have the role to take the courses. The big question is, how long does that course that you take last? So once you've taken the course, then how long does it stay active before you have to retake the course? And that's where the rule can get a little tricky. So let me dive into that on this next slide. Real quick, I want to mention one more thing on the continuing education for memory care. You do still have to meet the assisted living requirements of the 12 hours of continuing education, but you also need to meet an additional 6 hours specific to dementia and dementia-related topics. So that could be behavior management. It could be falls related to dementia, or fall reduction, or fall risk reduction. It could be things that, but they do have to be related to dementia specifically. And so it is 6 additional hours. It could be approaches for individuals with dementia. So you get to choose. It's not real specific. And I also want to note that there are providers out there that provide this education. And again, that listing is available on the ALF provider portal. And of course, TALA also offers these courses, which I'll have that information as well. But to get back to your question, Vanessa, let me get to that slide real quick. So are credits transferable? So this is where it gets a little tricky. So further in the rules on qualifications, that's this section right here, 553.253. That's all the qualifications area in the beginning for assisted living managers. A manager who can show documentation as a previously completed comparable course of study are exempt from the training requirements. That's the first thing. Now, I say this very carefully because it's the comparable course of study, meaning you have to match apples for apples. So to the last bullet point there, if you are in, let's say, the state of Georgia, like I'm in today, and I take their regulations course, that is not going to be equivalent to the Texas regulations course because those regulations differ slightly. So you could have a surveyor that says that's not a comparable course. And so therefore you don't meet the requirement. So that's important to note. Rule 553.253 A1D also further says an ALF manager who was employed by an assisted living facility as the manager and changes employment to another licensed assisted living facility as the manager with a break in employment no longer than 30 days is exempt from the 24-hour training requirement. So this rule right here is what I think can complicate your question. If you're in a sales role, you take the assisted living manager course, you show you have a completed course of study, you've done it, you meet the requirements, right? But are you acting in the role? And does this next rule under D, does that offset it? So when you read through the rule, it ends up being under up to interpretation. And I have to say, in my personal experience, I have not seen where if we had the certificate before we had it completed, I can show that, and you can show continuing education proof ongoing. I've not seen it be questioned too much, but technically under the rule, it could be questioned. And if you had a break in employment for longer than 30 days, they may require you to redo it. So it's a possibility.
Okay, thank you for that. Yep, okay. that makes sense. I mean, that was kind of I was an administrator, and then I moved to the San Antonio area, then become more sales. So I took all the classes and then got it and then went back in. It was just, yeah. So I was like, is there like a crossover period? And that kind of answered that question.
Right. It's a great question. It does come up more often than not, I will say. And I have to say, personally, my recommendation as a best practice is every so many years you retake it, especially when there's been a new rollout on rules, because you'll want to get fresh on the new regs. And you can retake, like, let's say the 8-hour of regs class, you can retake that to count towards your 12 hours of CEUs required. So some people do that every once in a while. Okay, this last slide here is that has the resources, where and how much are the courses? Where can I find them and how much do they cost? So the provider portal is very important for any assisted living manager. Highly recommend you get very familiar with that. It's HHSC's way of communicating with you to let you know what's required of you and what's required of your community, and where you can find all the resources that you need from the state. When you click on this link, particularly, it is partially from the portal directly, and then I've got the PDF that lists out all of the approved providers by HHSC to provide ALF management courses. So I'd advise, if you're looking into them, to really do some due diligence and make sure it's a course that's going to meet your needs. All of our regulations are, pretty well laid out for us, and they're pretty clear on what we can and cannot do. So you'll want to make sure those courses are meeting what you feel you need to gain so that you can be most successful in your community. As far as the cost goes, they vary. it depends on the provider that's providing it. I wish I could tell you that they're free or it's, $300 or $200. It's just going to vary, and it's going to depend on who you go with. Most of them you should be able to contact and find that information out. And of course, for Tala, we have that posted for you on Tala's website at tala.org. And I've listed that right there for you, the direct link for Tala if you want to look specifically for them. Okay. So that's in a nutshell what the minimum requirements are to be an assisted living manager. What I'd like to offer is to open the discussion and invite a few others from YPN to maybe give some insights on what other skills are important for on a recruiting standpoint when you're looking for somebody to become an assisted living manager that you're just not going to find on the rolls, but it's going to be something that you'll definitely see in experience and in life running a community. Anybody want to share?
Do you want to end the recording before we jump into this part, or?
Sure. Yeah, be happy to do that. Let me